One more time. Good morning, everyone. This is the first workshop of a number of budget workshops. We have this format to enhance our communications. So thank you, Catherine and David and Lisa, for putting this together. Very much appreciate it. And I turn this over to y'all.
All right, well, thank you very much. Excuse me, like you said, this is our first budget workshop, that we'll have several of these going forward. Tuesdays and Thursdays are the happening days. And we'll have a schedule that Catherine's going to go over here in just a few minutes. But basically, we do a few of these, and then we have a few of the certain budgets that we go over every day. I think we told y'all what they were going to be for today yesterday. But Catherine's going to go over what the future brings to you, so you'll know the schedule, and it's also going to be provided to you. Anytime you have any questions, feel free to ask. We're not going to go over every line item unless something the council wants to do, but that's not what we've done before. And if it's something that new people need to know something about that you don't feel like it's been provided, we can get that information to you. After we have each one of these, at the end of the item that's in front of you today, like admin, town council, outside agencies, we don't expect you to approve all the outside agencies today. It's something for discussion, and that's y'all's decision to make on those yourself. As we have, Rose has a book put together, and we'll put it back in the chamber room, back there in the back, that each of you can go by and look at, so you can see what each one of them's asking for. It would just be a quick overview today of what that is, but that has to be decided at some point as well. But at the end of these, we'd like to have some kind of consensus, unless there's a large item or something, because we're trying to balance the budget as we go through this. I know you get new sheets every meeting, so you start looking through things. So if you have any questions, let us know. But today, Catherine's going to be doing most of the discussion, and then we'll have Heather come in and talk about the Park and Recs at the end of it. But if you have any questions for us or need additional information, let us know.
Great. Thank you. Welcome. If you all turn through the very first page, you have our attempt at structuring this budget with basic guidelines and goals set by council. And that's the overarching policy guidelines that we tried to use when formulating the budget that's before you today. Listening to your strategic planning session and other meetings and comments we've heard along the way, we did the best we could to try to capture what we thought were some of your top 10 items, but hopefully today we'll be able to refine this, give us input, make changes, so that we make sure that the details in the line items to follow for the rest of these meetings are based on your guidelines and your goals that we set forward here. If you want to start right here, we can go through this, but just before we dig into that, some housekeeping. I know there's been some questions, so if you turn to the next page, you'll see the calendar. This calendar has been out for the department and staff since about December, and we are following on track right through from December down to where we are now, council budget work sessions in April. After these work sessions, you have the whole month of April to continue to look through this and refine it, and we will present to you the final recommended budget on May 14th. And then following that is the public hearing and the vote on the budget anticipated on May 28th.
That's a special meeting, May 28th, special.
It is, yes, sir. And then just below that, I have added the more details for these April council work sessions. We've tried to outline, well, each of the days, as you all know, they're on your calendars. And then if you want to write in what topics we hope to provide for you each of those days, we've set up a general framework. Of course, we're trying to accommodate staff schedules as well and moving through when we have the budget parts finalized. But for today, April 2nd, as you know, this is the council, outside agencies, administration, and recreation. So we hope to get through today. Again, depending on timing, if we have extra time, we're prepared to also discuss the peer and 8:01, and provide that to you if we get to it. If not, it would be flexed to another meeting date. The next meeting date is April 4th, which is this Thursday, where we will be discussing public safety. That will be police and fire. Again, depending on how much time you need to go through that, we might be able to squeeze in another one of our beach funds, accommodations, tax funds, one of those to add on to it. But generally, it's public safety. And then April 11th will be, public safety, then we have Public Works on the 11th, and Public Utilities on the 16th. Development Services, which includes planning and stormwater, on April 23rd. And we've reserved April 25th for finalizing or for any item that you think needs more follow-up, more discussion, more clarity. So we just reserve that for your purposes. Okay?
One more time to the council, outside agencies.
Administration and recreation for
Thank you.
today. And there are several smaller funds. Like I said, we'll work those around your timing in each of the meetings.
Back to page 1.
You want to go back through that? Thank you. Okay. I'll just leave it for your discussion. Certainly open the floor to you.
So the one thing I don't see in the top 10 principles and goals is to increase the effectiveness of our communications. I don't know how council feels about that, but I think the input sessions, the communication for those are kind of emblematic of the inability for reach to our public. Once they got the message, they were very well attended, but I think having someone to perhaps help Mike create content and to be able to present it in a more accessible, easily accessible manner. I think we expect him to do a lot. And I'd like for us to consider additional staff there.
That be under the increasing customer services to our citizens.
You could include it there. Thank you. Anyone else relative to goals?
Why is rec center capital project not included?
Council will make that decision, what they would like to do and how they would like for it to look and where they would like to proceed to.
That's a long way off from me knowing what money will be needed.
At what date of these 6 dates are we going to discuss that?
You're doing the discussion about the rec center budget today, so you
Good.
had to discuss that in there.
Anyone else?
I just wonder if you could raise the level of expectation, reward excellence. What precisely does that mean?
So our attempt to do that is the evaluation tool that we're using here for staff evaluations also needs a refresh and enhancement, as well as continuing to fund the merit program that they have had here, but really emphasizing and making some differentiations in the merit program. So that funding is included here.
Right, so thinking about a merit-based system, what I hear you saying is that you're going to take a look at the current evaluative instrument, the distribution of merit across our working population, and come to some, presumably, an improved instrument, better outcomes. Is that what that means?
Yes, sir.
That was not clear. Just out of curiosity, are these in rank order, or are they simply, you're capturing what you believe council through policy has enacted?
This is our attempt to streamline all of the things that we've heard and put it in a strategic guideline for your feedback. They are not in any type of rank order.
And while on the explanatory side of this, continue to save in preparation for beach renourishment. Is there a ratio or a number or an algorithm? How are those savings going to unfold over time?
Yeah, so basically, we're following the same footprint that we had previously that council set aside.
There's a percentage set aside.
Yes.
Yeah, it just says continue at the same level, so we just wanted to make that clear that we.
Accommodation
no-
tax, sand tax.
No changes there. That's correct.
Right, remember, council had adopted a finance model for the nourishment project in 2022, and there's no reason to stray from that. It's a solid model, it's working. I think we're on track.
I'm just trying to clarify what this means. If I were sitting in the public, I'd wonder what these things mean, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yes, we have adopted a model,
And it's been 2 years, so people forget.
and you and I had a very lively discussion about assumptions that you could make about growth, right? And I still say it may well be overly aggressive, but so far I've been proven wrong, happily.
Right.
I'll just say that.
We were fortunate that Mr. Hatton factored in a very
Conservative.
conservative growth number instead of a more aggressive growth.
He gave us
number. So-
2.5 million
Yeah.
projection, and we ended up with 3.5 million.
Right. And so, yeah, here we are in a difficult time, and yet we're probably still on track. So,
Yeah, for the time being. I'm just much more conservative about this than you are, which is the irony here, but we'll leave it, let it go there. Improvements to business corridor,
Sure, and we will see that in the admin budget just a little bit further, but Hallie's going, focusing with
Okay.
her advisory committee on a proposed facade grant program, and that is funded in here at their requested level. And of course, continued the sidewalks and landscape enhancements in those areas.
thank you.
Just one question on the additional proposed personnel. We have a lot of operations things that come up that we hear, we can't deal with that, we can't focus on that because we don't have the manpower. Is this gonna allow us to fund those mandates of code enforcement and making sure that the houses that are built actually are the size that the permit says they are and those kinds of things?
Yes.
I think you'll see those
So-
3 new positions there
Yeah.
in the attempt to do just that.
Yeah, there was two on Matt's side. One will be used for the zoning or the kind of things, and the other one's going to be compliance. Then on the tree and stormwater side, now that we've added the stormwater inspections through Rick's department, and we put in the new inspector last year, now they're doing driveways, pre and post construction, tree counts, pre-post. Then we have the annual inspection that we got to go back and do on these houses as well. So like we had talked about, and when y'all talked about, when you were talking about doing the budgets, we were trying to make sure that we had the personnel to be able to enforce the new ordinances that we had in place. And I think this is a good attempt to sort of streamline that. And we can sort of see that, how it goes this year with the number. We've got the drone person now doing the video work, pre and post. So it's a lot of moving parts, but we do need the additional personnel to be able to enforce what we have on the books, as y'all brought up before.
Didn't you get a additional tree person already in the budget?
This current year.
Yeah.
Yes, and he's already working for the town for the last about 4.5 months.
So then we're going to get 2 more beyond that person.
So It's three different sections.
Yeah.
Building inspections, home inspections, they're not getting any additional personnel. The other one's in zoning and then in stormwater.
Gotcha.
And when we get to that department, we'll talk about some reorganizational things in there we're doing as well.
If my questions are too much in the weeds, just tell me to hang on, we'll talk about them when we get there. Curious about beefing up our effort on potential revenue from grants and having somebody who can spearhead that and keep track of that. Is that something we're prepared to cover?
Let me speak to that. Initially, I have just gotten word from the North Carolina League of Municipalities that we will be given up to $30,000 in grant assistance for free. So actually, they just do the work, so that it's not even a pass-through of funds. They are working on a resolution that we will bring to council. They're hoping to get it for this meeting, but it may be for the May meeting. So that is our first attempt to do it on a free basis.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then other grants we had in stormwater. There's a line item in there for the grants. And then there's a line item in the sand that will continue to go after the dune plantings and those kind of things, beach accesses and CAM up. Those grants will come out of there.
The 30,000, Catherine, from the league. Now, are they that's to assist with grant writing?
It is.
I mean, a bigger need or a large need, I would think, is can we leverage them to tell us everything that's available, like all the grants that are available? I mean, that to me would be invaluable. And if that could be included or incorporated into that 30,000, where they could do all that research and let us know what is available.
So they have a consulting firm that they have chosen, and we've already met with them. And what their pattern is to sit down and discuss with us priorities. So if we are more interested in environmental type grants, for instance, public safety related grants, that sort of thing, they give us a guideline discussion, and then you can actually frame that 30,000 to be only grant writing. It can be compliance on the back end. It can be research up front to find them. So I think, yes, all of that can be combined and worked through with the consultant that the league assigns to us.
Okay. To expound on that further, I have nothing but good things to say on the grant acquisition. I think we've found a whole bunch. We've done a good job. At one time, before David announced his retirement, we were going to have the assistant to David. Part of their duty was going to be grant procurement, and part of Hallie's duties would be grant procurement. And I know we're in transition, and I feel good about everything, but I don't think we need to go down the path of hiring a person to do that, because we have the bodies already.
Hallie's already put together a few for us.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
So I just wanted to head that off before it became a issue that we got the bodies for that. We might not have bodies for something else, but we have the bodies for that, and we've been doing a good job at that.
Yeah, so once the grants get available or they come in to the server, then we usually send them to whatever departments that they're associated with, and ask those departments to look through it and see if it's something that we can apply for. If it's based on income or the value of property on the, those kind of things, we don't get those kind of things, so we don't have we're too rich here. But the ones that we are available to go for, then we do look to see if there's a need for it or something that we can apply for and actually utilize.
And,
Go ahead.
and one last thing, just so I can hear it, we don't feel we're missing stuff, or you don't feel we're missing stuff.
The things that we're applying for are things that we believe that we can get. If they're matching grants, we got to make sure we put the dollars on the backside to make sure we can match the grant. Some of them are jobs that are specifically ready to be broken ground. We don't have that many projects sitting here ready to break ground. So there's some engineering and those kind of things that we're trying to look for to get those off the ground. But I think with the rec center and some things like that, what Catherine's lined up through the league, that $30,000 can help us get started on some of the projects that you have talked about and discussed about to get somebody working on a few things.
Good. Thank you, sir.
One separate question. The county to tax collect, right, so the upside there is our citizens get one tax bill.
There you go.
So what kind of downside? Is there, interest on the float? I mean, what is the potential downside, if any, there?
So it is more expensive, slightly. It's a 1.5% cost, so as our tax revenue would go up, that cost would go up. But the benefit to that, as you said, is to the citizens, and so they don't have to come downstairs and pay their taxes in 2 different locations. It's also on the collection side. Instead of us having to have a person that does that type of collection, the county's already potentially calling that same individual, going after that same tax money anyway. So we don't double do the collection side of it. And for us internally, we believe that if we were to go in this direction, then finance would not need that additional position we had talked about.
And that offsets that 1.5%.
Correct.
Oh, very nice.
That's an excellent
That sounds
strategic
like a
move.
win-win for sure.
Yep.
Nicely done.
And that is in the details to follow as we go through admin. Again, none of these are hidden. We wanted to put these all up front, and you can see the nitty-gritty details in the line items if you want to.
Thank you.
Can I go back to the grants for just a second, please? Is it asking too much to be able, for as much council as well as the public, to have a point of coordination for grant information, what we're applying for, what the status is, something that is accessible? Because I think it's in part incumbent upon us for accountability to the public to let them know that we're leveraging absolutely every dollar available to us. I know that that has come up in previous discussions with the public at the podium during public comments. I think that would be a terrific asset.
Would it be better to announce that after the fact, to not hamper you while you're going after a grant? So every town, oh golly, Holden Beach, we missed this one. Oak Island's going after that. We better go after it too.
There's really a deal on that. But when we apply, I mean, we've got 3 in right now that we've applied for. We got probably a 25% shot on. But those are kind of things that we've applied for. But we need to have a tally sheet or somewhere for people to go see something and we can see something like that.
To your point, I think we can do a balance. We can make sure the public's aware this is what we have, this is what we're looking for, without maybe saying exactly who the
Yeah.
grantor is. And since we're back on the grants, if you'll allow me, from a finance perspective, just remember grants take a whole lot of work on our end.
They do.
Before, during, and after. There's reporting and compliance. Not to not do it, just please be aware. Every one we do is a lot more intense work on finance staff.
Anything else, council? Either on the issues the budget addresses or goals? You ready to get into the numbers? Thank you, Catherine and David.
And you wanted to see what was on the cutting floor. There's nothing on the cutting floor. The only thing that is not included is delineated below, the recreation and firefighters, which of course, both of those departments will be here to have that full discussion with. Okay, past the calendar page, your next set of, well, no, I think, Bill, not before the next tab. You should have an overview. It's called a budget preparation control totals. Just a little not.
No.
Back under in the first tab, back at the very beginning. Go to the-
Budget preparation control
There you go.
totals after the first tab.
I've got it. I think that's
Just
it.
right behind the calendar,
Yeah.
falling directly,
Actually, it's under, yeah, general fund.
Yeah.
oh, she's, I'm sorry.
Right behind
Put it in a different place. Okay. This, and bear with us, as you know, this is our first year using our brand-new financial system. I have been trained on the budget module as we go, literally being trained and operating at the same time. But one of council's requests, I have heard from several of you, was historic data. You wanted multiple years of data. So I have worked with the Edmunds Company, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years here of data in front of you. That may be more than you wanted, but I would rather give you more than
That's good
less.
stuff.
So this first page is what they call the controls page. It's a summarized total of all of your departments in the general fund. We're just focusing on the general fund today. High level. Again, we'll go through every single line item below it, or you'll be able to see it. But this is a good, quick overview of exactly where we are on the general fund. And I want to go through reading these reports, because I did not make these up. This is what we have to deal with. But in the columns, you will see the year, starting with, the first one says 2020. That is fiscal year 1920. And then right below the year, it says APPROP, approp. What that means is appropriated. That is your budget. Under that says the word actual. Those are the total actual dollars spent that year. So you can see in fiscal year 1920, town council's budget was 241,238. But your actual expenditures that year was 161,729. Everybody following me?
Mm-hmm.
Forgive me, it took us a bit of time to understand how they laid it out, so I want to make sure as we go through the rest of these meetings, you all are comfortable with how it's laid out.
So before we start studying all the numbers, are most of the appropriated and the actual pretty close to each other? Or is it sometimes there's a big variance?
Sometimes there are differences, and there's very logistical reasons for it. Sometimes a piece of equipment was not received in time, and it had to be bought the following year.
Gotcha.
Sometimes we found efficiencies and were able to make changes. But if you'll continue over to the stars, you'll see some stars with 2024, about midway down the page. That is your current year. That's starred because that is current year. Appropriated is the budget, and actual. And what we're looking at now for the budget for this upcoming year are all the stars where it says 2025. We're moving into July 1, will be fiscal year 24-25. So that is the column called requested that we will be discussing. Okay? And the way their system works is these are all the requests from the departments. After we have these work sessions and make any changes you need, it will roll, or we will roll it to the next column which says admin recommended. And that would be the recommended budget that is presented to you in May. And then if there are any additional changes after public hearings or council second reflections, then the final column is what's budgeted, and that will be final and what rolls into July 1st.
So, just for fun, looking at planning department. So there's a shorter history there, right? Bottom of the page, and there's the gap, the dissonance between what was appropriated and what was actually spent, and then there's a request that's double the amount in the current.
Yep.
Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, you are.
Because my first question is, what's the blank?
Of course, great question. If you remember back to the very first page on the goals, we talked about the code enforcement positions and the new stormwater tree inspector. So it is 2 additional code enforcement officer positions. It is 1 additional stormwater inspector position, plus it is the movement, David referred to it briefly, movement of some of these stormwater coordination efforts for inspection and,
Yeah. So the fund, the funds themselves, those dollars will still come from stormwater and be transferred over to general fund. So it's not a tax increase due to moving some of the staff over to put them in the right places. Because we had talked about moving Rick and them over to this one building, so when somebody comes in and gets a building permit, everything's inside. So when we get to development for services, we're gonna talk about some of the personnel changes and everything that we've laid out.
Yeah, I think, fair enough, but you have a department who has an appropriation, they only spent half of it, and then they double the appropriation request the following year. That's instant flag, so whatever that explanation is, you're gonna go through it, right?
Yeah, when we
Good.
get
I mean,
that,
those numbers just go
five
right
new
off the page.
positions, that's it.
Yeah,
5
okay.
new positions.
when we get to that department, yes, sir, we will go.
Yeah, I look forward to that discussion.
Good.
And the comfort is somewhere, there's a department or two that will have lower because those people are going over to the planning department.
Well, 3 are new, so there'll be no reduction there.
Yeah.
And we're still
See what
looking
John's
at,
saying.
right now, you'll see planning department is 541. We're looking at still breaking out, excuse me, stormwater and trees and vegetation into a separate department so you can be able to track those a little bit better. So there may be a 542 before we present this portion to council. That's why I said we're still working internally on that change, and then it'll be identified even further to be able to explain what it is.
Well, I mean, thank you for the sheet. It's very helpful to see the history. And it captures the delta instantly. So per your point, Councilman Kraft, the police are requesting less money.
Yeah, I saw that.
Not a lot less, but
Capital. Is
Okay,
all of
that's
the
the
most
answer
of
there.
those explanations of capital that a lot was purchased in prior years that is not now needed. 'Cause
and you said nothing's on the cutting floor, is that correct?
Correct, except for the thing that says what's not
Okay,
included.
but still, the fire request is less than the previous year.
Same, capital,
Am I reading that right? That's shocking.
Yep.
It's true.
capital, yes.
And Public Works is almost cut in half
Never happens.
because people have changed.
And that's more capital things that were bought last year. So when you get to we knew this was going to be a discussion sheet, but when we get into these departments, then you'll actually see what these changes are.
Yeah, fleet maintenance,
It's an overview.
yeah.
And the overview was to show you what it would look like if everything we have in here was presented today and voted on today. Catherine's looked at a balanced budget to be able to keep working through this. So that's why I say at the end of these workshops, it would be nice to have some kind of consensus, because we don't want to wait till the very last day and council come back and say, nope, we want to review this, we want to review that. We need to review these things as we go so we can have a working document to keep you informed of where we're at. Because if you add something, if you come back in and say, we'd like to put $1 million in the rec center, well, then we got to look at that, because that, right now, we have a tax rate of staying flat. So things that we add or increases in here, then we got to look at tax rates, or you got to look at transfers.
Before we get too nervous on any increases when we do see them, do you know what percentage of an increase in revenue we've had from 23 to 24? Because I keep thinking our accommodation tax is going up and probably our property tax.
It has, and I too was conservative on the initial run-through revenues. I used the preliminary scrolls directly from the county and looked at what we have increased so far. Exactly, was the plug-in, and anticipated a very small continuing growth increase. I think it's less than 2%. Accommodation certainly is doing better than that, but on ad valorem tax is not. And we anticipated, I'm in several statewide groups that discuss the economics of the year coming forward. People better at this than I make predictions about sales tax and state shared revenues. So in reading that, they are predicting very conservative, if not flat, numbers in most of those cases. I believe we might fare better than that in the rest of the state, but nonetheless, I have adopted that very conservative approach in the revenue estimates for now. And I'll continue to watch and adjust if we can.
John is smiling.
Well, if you recall, last year, we worked really hard to be revenue neutral with the county's tax valuation that hit, especially properties in our area.
And even sand.
A significant increase in valuation. So we worked hard to be revenue neutral. So we will see small incremental increases, but we won't see a huge windfall on property tax for ad valorem. Unlike other taxation agencies that did not work hard to be revenue neutral, we at least did that to try to protect Oak Island. The other question I have, historically in previous years, we've had the projections through the end of the fiscal year, and I notice on this report, those are all zeroed out. Is that something that we're working on to get included in our reporting?
Yes, sir.
It's just not available today.
I just didn't have the manpower to
Yeah.
get it in there by today, but
Understand.
I'm continuing to work on that, and we'll do the best we can. Certainly, it will be in your recommended budget, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the actual number is, what you see is the April 1st. So
So
it's
through
able to,
March
so it's
30th.
able to
Right.
track now a little bit more, so.
That's good.
But we don't have the other number, like you said.
And that column is certainly very important. If we were having these discussions like January, you would have no idea where you are going to be by the end of the year. But because this is as of April 1st, it's really close.
Yeah, it's close, but we may have some, there's still might be some big checks that need to come out
Fiscal year.
That's right.
before the end of the year.
And that's very typical.
Right.
Certainly, departments do a good job of making sure that, because you never know what things might come up in the middle of the year. So they do prepare for, towards the end of the year, if there is flexibility, they can buy that extra pad of paper that they want to, that they needed, but might put it off until late in the year to make sure that they don't go over budget. And these departments do a really good job of that, making sure that they don't.
And most of these actual projections, since we have a fourth of the year yet to go, won't be a 25% increase. They've already had their big expenditures.
Wastewater, water, they're the opposite. They're going to increase. Public Works, they're getting ready to, they're almost finished the parking lots and everything, so all that stone's been bought. There's other items. I mean, we have two seasons. We have the end of the year and we have the beginning of the year, July and August, and we have June, July. So,
Yeah.
I mean, or May and June. So we do have, some of them hold money just for those reasons, but you'll see at the end of the year, usually that's spent.
And philosophically, we want to encourage them to continue to be good stewards of that money. I don't want to penalize them for saving if they found a way to save. That would be negotiated the following year, but we don't want to use that as a penalty framework.
The 5-year look back, so thank you. We've talked a lot
Yeah.
about that, and we really cannot thank the two of you enough for doing that for us.
You ready to move on? You are ready to move to council's budget. Town council. Tab. Right.
Here's that one.
All right, so if you're comfortable reading it, again, I'll suggest that we look at the requested column. That is where the numbers are changing for current year and where you can make any changes necessary. The very first line is the potential question. I assumed that whatever COLA is in policy for the staff to receive the COLA based on the CPIU numbers as of January 1st. I pulled two different places that show you the CPIU numbers, and they were consistent at 3.2. So I have also plugged that in for council members. That is up for your discussion. Departmental supplies, the same. I have kept most of that the same as current year. Some of the things I have heard you all discuss, I've tried to capture and put in here for you. One of them was some miscellaneous funds to assist advisory boards and commissions if needed. I know we had some training requests this year, some small material supply requests from some of the boards. So I have plugged that in on line 10, 410, 2102, funds for advisory boards and commissions. Legal services,
So it was 5,000 last year?
No, there was no money in there for
No
this
money
at
in
all.
there.
And you have requested that. That is plugged in, as well as an increase in legal services.
Increase for legal services, is that the town attorney's salary or,
It is what you pay your attorney,
okay.
and any attorney.
Does that anticipate that we are going to go out and we may see a change in the rate?
That is why I increased it so substantially, yes.
Well, that and increase in code enforcement, was that taken into consideration as well?
It's a pretty significant increase. I really don't know what to predict, but you can go up more if you're uncomfortable with that number.
No, I'm not sure even what it would cost, but I know
Yeah.
that we're not using Brian for court fees.
So I would say that you would go into this in July, the RFP would be issued for those services. And then as the October timeframe or whatever council lays out for the adoption or approval of whomever. What we did is we took what we had previously spent on attorney fees, looked at the hourly rate currently being charged and the hourly rate of going rate for other municipalities. We looked at the hours of service and what they had sort of built into their timeframe. And there is a little bit of extra working margin in there to get there, but January, December, if you see something needs to be modified, council can always go back and modify that for whatever changes y'all make this year or next year.
Dave, for the code enforcement component, which since we've never had that come up in the past, what are we using a number, which is kind of a guesstimate, what that cost is going to be?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We don't have a history, like you said, of what's actually being charged. We're looking at the hours that we're assuming is gained on that, because we're looking at staff hours. We've tried to streamline that as we present it to you, trying to make our package ready to go to court when we send it to them. Everything's in line, so the hours that he has, current attorney has said that he's billing that particular straight through to a third party, at the same rate that we currently have. But we did assume some hours into the $120,000 that you see for that to take place next year. We've shortened up the process, so now we're going to court faster. And we've already seen some of those that we just sent to him this past, or yesterday. We sent 5 new cases, and those 5 new cases are the shorter cases. So it's on the books and it's starting to hit, so we need to, you've asked for some of that information at the next meeting, so hopefully Brian will be able to provide that. I don't really have a.
So, if I may, I'm sorry.
No, please, no, go.
So in previous budgets, for which you are not accountable, Madam, legal fees, services were scattered all over the place. So I assume this is a consolidated number and you've just multiplied by 2, correct?
Except for fire, the police and fire did.
Police has, last year y'all agreed to have an attorney for public safety, so that person is there. But the other one, you're basically right.
Okay, so on the one hand, I'd like to see a total cost for all legal services. But specifically to this point, I'm searching for the appropriate phrase here. Given some of the irregularity we've experienced in billing, and given the potential with an RFP to have a different law firm, which may have a significantly higher rate, I'm leading to, do we really have enough money here?
I believe we do. I mean, what we had figured in there is extra hours and taking the rate of going rate that's surrounding our community. I believe you have enough.
We
The
are-
legal services, over the last 4 years, we've taken legal services out of everybody's, this is the only legal service. You have professional services, which would be engineering or architects or things that, permit renewals and those kind of things in people's budgets. But legal services is all here except for public safety.
If the administration is comfortable with the guesstimate here, I'll accept that, obviously, but I'm willing to put more money in there, given the fact that we may be more vigorous in pursuing certain things which have associated legal costs, given the fact we may have a different law firm billing at a higher rate. want to make sure we're adequately
Okay.
prepared on the budget side, that's all.
What would you like? We're all a little bit guessing at this point.
Well,
Last year, we appropriated 185, but spent,
There's reasons for that.
okay.
And that was a budget
We'd rather-
adjustment that we
yeah.
brought. to
I
council.
understand the reasoning. Okay, I'm with you on that.
But even the 122 in the actual, that's as of bills submitted?
But
when-
there's
when-
other reasons for that as well. Usually it's about a $60,000 average.
Per year.
Yes, ma'am. It was 45 to 55,000.
That's incredibly low.
So, but you look at the hourly rate that he honors when,
Well, but that's not that's not likely to continue.
no, it's not. That's what I say. So we looked at it, doubled it, added some hours into it, and that's where you have the number that you currently have.
Would you like to add 30,000?
I'd like us to be at 175.
That's what.
I think that's the more comfortable estimate,
One what, John?
175.
I'm just looking at the cost of going to court on
Okay.
code enforcement.
I'm looking at the hourly costs.
Mm-hmm.
Likely
That
to be
too.
$250 an hour.
But court costs are.
That would save you all from coming to a council meeting one night and saying, we need a change in that, and if we don't spend it, hallelujah. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd agree.
The audit, of course, is in your budget, and I'll bring your attention to special projects. That's line 3104 down at the bottom of the page. That's trying to highlight the significant changes here. That one is substantially lower. The only reason is because last year was a one-time special project for art of $50,000 that you all had in council's budget. Assuming that was not going to happen again current year, so that's not in there. This is just a miscellaneous special project line.
Did we ever spend any of the 50,000 that was allocated?
Not a lot.
You have spent $1,525.
That's
Does that carry over?
No, there's not an active PO. It would not carry forward.
That's my concern. If it doesn't carry over, then 5,000 is likely too little. Do you think of an artist, and granted, there are, like the Arts Council, et cetera, who can help with certain amount of fees, but funding an artist for one professionally done mural will exceed $5,000.
So if we would like to continue the art special project, we will add that in.
Yes?
Is there a plan? Since I'm new, is there a plan, or we're just doing these one-off when somebody gets a whim to put a mural somewhere? I'd like for council to have a plan to see where these are going to go, what, who's going to be doing them. It's a little too loose for my comfort.
When we get over to, or admin, we can have Hallie come up and
Okay.
explain that during that time.
But
And
it's
if you
not
want to,
just murals.
Yeah,
In other words, we've created requests before for art in the lobby, for art in the stairwell, for art in our chamber. We've got a
Sculpture.
large white soundboard. We could be, promoting Oak Island in some way, shape, or form. We are absent things that promote our community within our own town hall. And that request has been made. Add to that the mural projects, for which we don't have a plan. But there's no plan for the art program, period. And I would really, to echo Terry's comment, I'd like to see a plan for that. Bill was a big advocate of bringing this forward in last year.
Well, I think we had a very interesting and high-level discussion about the importance of public art and how it enhances a community's aesthetic, feel, how it contributes to quality of life, and so on and so forth. And then there were multiple suggestions from council, murals, framed art. I, for one, would support sculpture. We had a budget, and then Unfortunately, we had to form a committee, and it kind of broke down at that point. So you're right in the sense that better planning and a sense of how art is introduced into the public is probably going to require some kind of mechanism. We didn't have that. But I would say commitment to public art is an important aspect of what we should be doing. How we do that, whether it's encouraging and supporting local artists or whether we're funding it, is a larger question. And looking at Bob's post the other day about there's no signage as you enter the island, I realized that's DOT. But theoretically, we should have some welcoming signs that are artistically pleasing, you know, on both bridges. Instead, we have campaign debris and, so there are a lot of potential projects. The issue is the mechanism, right? That and the funding was basically seed money. I mean, with $10,000, you're not going very far. But we wanted to start, and thanks to Howie, we have done some things. But now that we have an EDO, we might be able to go further. Right?
To add to that, if I may, so I was driving down to Caswell Beach the other day, and they have a beautiful color sign in front of Town Hall where it says, "Welcome to Caswell Beach." Mm-hmm. And then as you leave, the flip side of the sign says, "Thank you for visiting Caswell Beach." You know, I would like for us to consider, not sure what the cost is let's put a nice lighted sign in front of Town Hall, and we can have some welcoming messages there. But you know what? We have community interest messages, meetings that are taking place, events that are taking place, where people don't necessarily have to go to a website. As they're driving by, they see that there's, Friday night concert. So it'd be a great opportunity to get the message out in the community. Don't know what the cost is, I have no idea. But boy, I think that would
Familiar with
that would be a...
You did the sign for Caswell?
Yeah, that was about $75,000 just for the electric
Duh,
part of it.
Of course you know it.
So total, I would say you're looking at $100,000.
Okay.
But they did that with ARPA money, and that is certainly a possibility.
But again, I'd like to see us start with a plan, a strategic plan for art in town hall, art in the community, signage,
Well,
instead of just
It-
doing things on.
The same
Dilemma we have with our advisory board. We have a
great idea, but no
no particular group knows that they can take that ball and run with it.
well, we have an EDO now. I want to go back, if I may, just for a second. I agree with you, we do need a plan. Mark, you had another idea, and I'm trying to remember what it was. It had something to do with linking art to our community parks. Something about scenes where you take photos, selfie trail, or what's that
Yeah,
called?
it's like they call them a selfie trail, selfie journal. And Hallie's, she's been looking into that. But essentially, you pick buildings that are in public locations that have a canvas, and you paint murals on them, and then you encourage the public, visitors, residents, to collect a picture at every destination, and then they come in and they get a T-shirt or water thermos, some kind of,
And Great Pinnell and
Yeah.
Great
Some kind of
Pinnell and
little
49th
token.
Street has already got something
Yeah.
on their own. So that's a start.
yeah. It's very popular in places, in tourist destinations like Charleston, Savannah. Those kind of places will have these little, public selfie tour type things where you get something in the end if you collect all the destinations. So,
So I don't want to leave out sculptures that John has suggested. So we do have the turtle in front of the current rec center, which I believe was grant funded in part by the Brunswick County Arts Council. So to be able to put sculptures in some of our park areas with the idea that I believe, whether it was Howie's idea or some collective think on art, was to establish that art trail, which could be a combination of things. It doesn't have to only be murals, which requires a building, but You know, it would include Veterans Park with the VFW Memorial Wall. It would include, you know, so just to, if we're thinking plan, to be able to create on a map a plan that we grow to, and the mechanism for how we get there. Whether it's a staff member supported by the business community, with Hallie's board, or whether it's some other mechanism. But that means someone has to write the plan, someone has to then staff the plan, so we can't, I sometimes think we have great ideas, we just don't carry it out to fruition, and then they become unfunded mandates, so to speak,
Well-
and we've been disappointed because we didn't get there.
Looking at the other side of this, you know, art has intrinsic value in and of itself, but having additional cultural attractions in a tourist town has an economic value too. So I would say we should create a fund here, 15,000, and let our EDO build the mechanism, right? Because the problem you're going to run into, I happen to be friends with a sculptor in town, but there are other sculptors, not just one, right? So you're going to have to decide, you know, where it goes, what it is, and so on and so forth. So you're right, we need a mechanism and a plan. And we need enough seed money to get something going, whether it's murals or sculpture or photography or trails.
So if we were willing to fund it at $50,000 last year, why wouldn't we just carry that over?
I'd say we do.
It's up to y'all.
Rather than underfund it and have to come back, we have someone to actually usher a plan through with a committee to support it if Hallie is
And we're giving her an
willing
assignment.
to devote. Well, I don't
I know,
want it,
it's going to fall on her
Yeah.
again, and,
but again, I don't want it to be an unfunded mandate,
yeah.
right? So to say, we want you to do all these wonderful things, but, oh, by the way, you only have $50,000 to do it, just makes it harder, because then she has to be creative about how she does these things without any money.
Let's give her some seed money and go forward. I think we're all aware, for better or for worse, our culture and our politics are deeply divided. So we're going to need a mechanism and a plan. We can't just stick something out there and call it art,
I agree.
right? We need to be careful.
Well, that's what the hiccup was on just getting prints and artwork, which would be free, hung in the town chambers and around the town hall. We didn't have anybody to sign off on this is acceptable and this is not acceptable.
Yeah.
So we need the mechanism. I'm in favor of your number, and I'm going to vote yes for it. But I want to, on the front end, point out, we only have so many millions of dollars, and somewhere along the way, we're going to have to say no to something. And
Well,
we found an extra 100 here and an extra 50 there, and
my riposte to that would be, in a $30 million budget, 15,000 is de minimis.
or 50.
It's
I'm in
it's
favor of the 50.
Why
Barely
not
seed
just carry
money.
it over?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to it, I just wanted to point that out,
No.
that somewhere along the way, we're going to have to say, how many fire trucks? How many police officers?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
although the fire budget is down, but there you go.
And keep in mind, as we meet with Hallie later, when we say a selfie tour or selfie trail or whatever, the goal would be to place those destinations at attractions, like the Ocean Ed Center, the Point, our parks, Veterans Park. So the goal would be to get tourism to go visit existing amenities and entities throughout our recreation community.
Not our
and to
favorite
bring
restaurant.
awareness to those attractions, right?
Yeah.
You know, Ocean Ed, right, we hear them every year, and we see their peaks and valleys in attendance, right? They get overwhelmed, and then they go through a lull. So, you know, this could maybe help either drive more consistent attendance or bring more awareness to the Ocean Ed Center or other attractions.
Great point.
Or whatever, right?
Great point. I'd much rather them be aware of the par 3 golf course is there
Exactly.
than they are
Yeah.
one of our coffee shops is there. Yeah.
It's a great idea to put it there. Well, I propose that we carry that over.
Am I hearing 50,000
I'm in
requested
favor of
for
that.
that item?
My only other comment for town council budget, I opposed our COLA increase last year, and I'll oppose it again this year. So you'll notice I wasn't successful last year in opposing the COLA increase.
I hope you're not successful this year either.
You're still working.
Yeah,
Well, we did have a discussion about what
we're underpaid.
instrument to use. So the Fed uses a different calculation than CPI, and at least in the last year and a half, that number has run lower, significantly lower by several points. I think we should, when we get to that point, Mark, I think we should have that discussion again. I'm for a COLA. It's a question of how you calculate it and what set of numbers you want to use, right? Because we use CPI and we found ourselves two years ago in a position where the CPI number was approaching 8. We would go bankrupt doing that. So it was mediated by administration, but it would be safer to have a mechanism which historically runs lower. And I don't think anybody can argue if the Federal Reserve is using it. It's obviously reasonable. Well, I guess people could argue, but not be that.
Have we in the past, have we surveyed other towns to see what their salaries are? Okay.
We go around, managers send out a list about what they're offering this year for CPIs or merit. Ours is on the low side of all the towns around us. Everybody's putting in more than what we put in the current budget.
And is that, are those results, is that something you can share with us? I would like to see that. I'm kind of curious. And before we flip the page here, I want to ask about the audit contract. So a very, competitively priced. And I see you putting a little bit of an increase in over the, are you looking at potentially going out for an RFP? Is that your recommendation, or might the scope just be a little bit broader this time around?
Yes, both. I do think the scope is going to need to be a little bit broader and a general increase for current year, but we have that on the RFP list for sometime this year to develop that RFP after the audit. So definitely anticipate some increase. And the other part is that is not all just for the one year-end audit, that also includes our benefit audit, which is required.
Before we move on, admin, at some point, I would like to pursue Councilman Chulo's question at a higher level. So when we look at our salary structure, is it competitive? How do we fare versus our common group, if you were like to like? Because when you have that frame around it, 3.2 COLA and a merit increase, you're looking at 6% year over year, which would be significant if we were truly at the equalized rate, but I'm not sure we are. We seem to lag, if I remember correctly, but I want to have that discussion with numbers so we can actually see it, right? Yes, can we have that discussion at some point? Not now, but when appropriate. Okay, so that gets to COLA, gets to merit, gets to why can we get policemen, maybe we need to do this, and so on.
One other line, employee volunteer appreciation, and it's 0. But I know this past year, David and I went to a luncheon for the people, the beach services people, which was wonderful. At the end of the year, they had a nice luncheon and a send-off to one of their retiring members. Is that what that is for?
So that would have been charged in their budget.
All
Doesn't
those-
look like you all have done anything since fiscal year 1920.
Yeah, back before, we used to do whatever volunteer groups the council wanted to have come to a luncheon or a dinner or whatever, but since then, council hasn't said, let's have a dinner or anything like that.
And you do your annual
We do everything inside departments.
Christmas for the host, for every employee. That's taken care of.
That's in the departments.
I'm good.
Next tab is outside agencies. Again, nothing on the cutting floor. This is exactly as requested from the agencies. No significant changes from prior year, with the exception of the senior citizens center. And that additional money was requested for building repairs. All of the other ones were general operating cost requests.
It's my understanding, and it's been a stickler in the past, any request over $4,000, or is it 3,000? Five. Okay, we request an audit. So they knew that, okay.
And Water Rescue did present their audit last year, so, or this year, I should say.
So you have looked at the audit from Water Rescue?
Yes, it was a compilation audit, and it was substantially more than they had given us in the past. So, it reflects.
Are they in compliance? I mean, just cut to the chase. I don't care what kind of audit. They submitted an audit, correct? By an auditor. There's a seal on it. Yes,
A certified public accountant.
okay. Because there was some hemming and hawing about that.
I'm glad to see they asked for a less amount this year
Did
than
ask
last year.
less.
Fundraising. Now, these that are zero and have always been zero, is that just organizations that could request but never have?
These are, the way that the system works is that it pulls from all prior years. So you were saying absolutely everything. It means that at some point in the past in this town, somebody created a line item for that. And I guess if I looked back more than 6 years, I would assume I would find some funding for each of those. I did not create these. These were pulled forward from historic data.
So in the interest of fairness, the airport submits an audit too, correct?
Yes.
Howie submits an audit?
Yeah. He did.
So with the 4th of July festival, I'm thinking relative to, you've really not done anything for our 25th anniversary. And nor, I guess it's the drum I keep beating. It would be a shame to let our silver anniversary to go by unnoticed. Our focus is typically on Beach Day, not our Founder's Day or birthday or what other communities call their annual celebration. But this year in particular, do we want to do something in the festival, the 4th of July festival, in the terms of a float or in some other capacity? I guess we've not given the 4th of July festival money in the past, is that correct?
Correct. Years ago.
I'm sorry?
Years ago, we did, yes.
But it's just something that triggers, not that we want to put money in the 4th of July festival, I'm simply saying that at some point, we need to consider that. I'm not sure where it would go in terms of funding from a budget perspective. But if we're in April, and we're talking 3 months away, so even ordering materials, supplies, banners, whatever it is we want to do to celebrate our 25th anniversary, we're
Behind the 8 ball.
pushing the envelope in terms of getting things back in line.
There wasn't nothing in there.
Have we put money in to your, Catherine, and
We didn't, she's looking at the current year's budget. Those items would be bought, we'd pay for the float, everything would be purchased before June 30th. So if that's something council would like to, somebody volunteer to be on the committee to start seeing the 25th, now's your time to speak up, but,
I'm happy to be part of that.
So in current year's budget, the beach day expenses, we'll get to that in admin, line 3,400 was increased to be able to supply additional funding for the 25th anniversary.
Yep.
So it would be in current year budget.
Good.
Am I the only one that shares that, or is there someone else who'd be willing to work toward that?
Let me ask,
What he wants to
if I may, Madam Mayor, a question. They're pouring over the numbers. So the Beach Day Festival, that's a Recreation Department program, correct?
Yes.
So there's an increase in there for the 25th anniversary. So
Currently.
So in fact, is it going to be a rec department program?
It's in that,
Budgeted in
yeah.
admin.
We pay for it in admin. We pay for it in admin, but yes, it's a recreational activity.
So they're going to plan the 25th.
No, nobody right this minute is planning a 25th.
Well, if we're going to throw dollars at it, somebody needs to be responsible.
The mayor said she was going to take it.
I'm suggesting the rec department, but if the mayor's volunteering, that's fine.
Well, we could do that through the committee as well. I'm happy to work with the rec committee. But again, we don't really have a good mechanism for asking committees to do much of anything, nor do we ask them very often, which I think is something else that really needs to be fixed.
Well,
In terms of,
Committees, they're on the ball, they.
oh, I understand that, but we just have to, we don't have a mechanism from council to committees to say, we'd like you to work on this.
Sure.
And we're kind of coming at them last minute. If y'all have expectations and or suggestions, I'd appreciate sending those to me.
We're coming at them in the last minute, but we're coming with dollars in our
That's true
It's
too.
different. They have an existing event, so we just turn it into, from where I'm sitting, I would suggest we turn it into a hybrid event. Happens to be our 25th, it happens to be Beach Day. They have more money, they could plan some activities, public involvement now, knowing they have an additional X dollars, whatever that is.
Yeah. Well, Beach Day celebrates our anniversary. We have just failed in the past to make this connection.
But what I'm trying to short
I
circuit
understand.
is forming another
Create
committee.
another.
No.
I agree.
No.
we have a good rec department advisory board. Turn them loose.
Use them, I agree.
Okay, so what's a reasonable amount of money? In addition to, what did they?
It'd be current year's budget.
It's, right, it is in there in current year. It looks like about $15,000 to $20,000 extra was added. So $15,000, if they spend it in current year, that should be sufficient.
They need to come up with some kind of logo design or shirt design or whatever like to be done.
I mean, they could.
Actually, there's
they
only
can
10
fundraise
left.
off it too. I just want to make sure we have enough money for the helicopter so we can get the mayor off of the beach.
With the parachute people.
No parachute.
Well, if it's the 25th anniversary, whenever we talk about it, I mean, past mayors and past town managers, I mean, bring in
No, same-
people that were part of the 25 years,
Yeah.
even past council members for that matter.
Let the rec folks figure that
Yeah.
out. They're good at it. Let's give
Yeah.
them the money they need.
I'd like to see light pole banners as
Yeah.
well.
Contact that
Let-
parachute group, have them part of the
The
festivities.
community know. All right, so with y'all's concurrence, I will have a conversation with the rec board, and we'll come back to you with the plan.
I would include the rec staff in that as well, but
Well, they are automatically included. Heather, is that correct? She's at every meeting, I mean, they work. All of our committees should be working in concert with a staff member. And yes, the two of them do.
So the money that Catherine was looking at We put in extra for the fireworks because we're doing a little bit bigger finale this year. We're looking at a different band this year, the bigger band that came from the SOS. Now they're coming back to do the July 1st for us. We were getting contributions from the 4th of July committee. As you know, it separated from the chamber last year and sort of formed itself, Southport, 4th of July. They had told us they were going to pay for the band. And now it's come down to where they're not paying for the band, they're paying for a portion of the band. So there's things there that we've had to eat some of the cost as well, but we've done a few things internally to make that day a little bit better, but we don't have any kind of apparel or any other kind of things. The mayor was talking about doing a float into July 4th as well, so we can do something there to make it recognized. So if it's something we want to do, we need to make sure if we need to come back and ask for additional funding, there's places that we could probably transfer the monies to accommodate that.
So the 15,000 that's been set aside for the 25th anniversary has probably already been spent on bands
been
and
spent.
It
fireworks.
looks like the
Some of it
fireworks
has,
was
yeah,
enhanced.
band and fireworks. But this year, next year, the fireworks goes back down to what it was before. This is
Might
just
need
that
more money
one-time
for this year.
finale. We're doing a few things special, but
Why don't we come back with a budget?
It is, for the beach day, we'll see that in admin when we get to admin.
An additional amount over and above the 15 that is
Correct.
getting eaten up by fireworks and bands.
fireworks and bands, because we want to do something special that day.
Yeah.
So everything was increased.
Good, good, good.
Did
As
they-
far as hanging banners or T-shirt sales or
Yeah.
whatever,
We're pushing the
that's not
envelope
been
from
done.
ordering perspective, even on T-shirts at the number we need, but,
A banner to hang across the road or those kind of things.
yeah.
So because that's already bumped up, we need to revise that number if you're communicating to them. There's only about 10 left, because we've already bumped up the bands and the fireworks
Well, if it's,
for clarity.
we still need, I would think it's incumbent upon the rec board and myself to come back to council with a budget.
Because Heather and them's already got beach days done. They got it laid out just like normal. So is whatever extra activities that we're wanting to add now, or extra merchandise. or extra-
Recognize, yeah, recognition, et cetera.
Does the chamber specify what their request is for?
Yeah, it'll be in a book, like I said, we'll have the book in there for y'all to be able to read or whatever you like to do.
I remember they were all general operating, I believe, but I can find out more specifically for you.
Do we feel like we get a benefit from the chamber?
Some,
You get to go to any chamber event as a member.
we could advertise the magazine, their book, those kind of things. You deal more with it than I do.
The request says to continue to enhance our efforts to promote the business community.
So I would go back with your question, are we maximizing the benefits we could have from the chamber, or is it business as usual?
What we've done in the past, if y'all have a question of any of these that you'd like for the people to come present to you, we can always have them come at one of the meetings and explain to you exactly what they're providing and what they would like. We've done that in the past.
Yeah, versus what they can provide, so I'm not sure we're maximizing. We might be, I just don't, it's information I don't have.
And some groups are good for the community, and I like having a strong chamber. But I understand what you're asking.
I think there's been more involvement from Oak Island businesses in the chamber in the last few years. Haven't been attending the meetings as well, which I don't know that Oak Island has been attending meetings in the past, but now she's regularly attending.
We good?
If you want to move to admin, it's about an hour and a half into our 3 hours. Would you like to take a break or continue with admin administration?
Do you need a break, council?
Let's take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
From break, and we're about halfway through time-wise. So we've got 2 departments to go, just as creating an awareness. Back to you, Catherine.
Okay, we're on tab for administration. And for here forward, we're also providing the organizational chart for each department. So you can see the people and the positions and the totals.
So, sorry, where you flip that page. So county tax collection will result in savings. Did I hear that correctly?
It will, not dollar savings, it will prevent us from needing an additional position in finance.
So we're not reducing a position.
Correct.
We-
In the work sessions that we did early in January, we had anticipated bringing you a request for an additional finance position. We found a, we think, more creative and better approach. It's very hard to attract high-level financial people around here. I know we have similar concerns in other departments attracting good folks. I have one open right now and not received a lot of interest. So this is a way to have the same level of service provided without having to go out and hire an additional person.
Thank you for
So
that
it's a give and take.
clarification.
Yeah. So the one new position that we referred to on the very beginning, guiding principles and goals, was enhancing customer service for our citizens at all levels. And one of the ways I've heard it talked about many, many times, so we've put it in here for your discussion, is to add a receptionist back at the front desk downstairs. So that is the one addition in the admin budget.
Big thumbs up.
Very big thumbs up. Those
Good,
ladies in the utility department
Are
are
bombarded.
They are.
People are mad at them for not having their debris picked up. Yeah.
They handle all the calls, including how's the fishing today.
Yeah.
So they handle a lot of customer interaction. This would help tremendously.
I like that idea.
I think, given the state of AI, we're not prepared, at least as a community, to walk into an office and there's nobody there.
Right.
Yeah.
This makes sense. Eventually, there may be a robot there, but for now. But I do think, just as a, as an aside, every organization, including ours, should be focused continually on how can we improve customer service. So, that.
Of transfers to the golf course, but I see we're putting in a little bit smaller transfer, but it's still a significant amount. That last report I saw, it looked like there was an increase in rounds out there, and so revenue, I would assume, has increased with the increase in the number of rounds. Are we expecting this number to be reduced?
So when you get to the budget that we'll see later, he has some expenditures for capital projects in there that pick things up as we need. If you want not to purchase a mower or something like that, then yes, something like that be reduced. There has been additional play. So when you get to that budget, you'll see the capital expenditures and improvements that are basically created. This additional funds still be kept at that level. So that time, the council can make a decision on what they want to do, and this will be a balancing act for this job.
But he's going to come speak to us?
Yes, when you get to that budget, today's just ours.
Yeah.
Don't have everybody sitting here, but.
Yeah.
Yes, so that would be one of the topics that you have to look at.
Okay.
Even in the current budget, there was a significant allowance for capital improvements. Okay.
There's a mayor's association.
Yes,
Dues.
I believe I put that in council's budget.
Okay.
Are you aware of any anticipated increase in that dues amount?
Going back to the golf course for a moment, are we anticipating a report from the committee with recommendations to make it more competitive in terms of generating revenue?
I think maybe Bob.
I mean, to paraphrase my colleague's question, is there a plan? A new plan? Because there's been plans in the past.
One of their requests at the one meeting I went to, and Mr. Chulo may add to this, but one of their very strong requests was to increase the advertising amount, and that is included in their budget.
So that request echoes down the years,
Here, yeah.
at least 7 of them from where I'm sitting, and we have yet to do it.
Well, I
So
doubled it, so it's done.
that may not be enough, but
But doubled it from,
From 2
yeah.
to 4. So
From
yeah,
2,000 to
certainly when
4,000.
we get to that budget,
And we
need
have,
to do more.
there's no signage. I mean, literally, the only sign that we have is the one that Howie put up. And we are struggling with they are struggling with trying to get some sort of signage that's approved by DOT, approved by the town. Something that, David and staff are working on. The good news is the committee is, got to be very marketing oriented now. It was tended to be very static in the past, and waiting for things to happen. Having Jonathan as the superintendent has greatly increased the quality of the course. It is an amazing change. And for years, it was just literally a cow pasture. And people just didn't want to play. Now, it's just the opposite. I believe our rounds are up somewhere around 40%. So it's a significant increase in the amount of people that are playing. But very marketing oriented. What can they do in the community? Increasing advertising. And really, getting the word out within the town of Oak Island. If we were to survey the citizens of Oak Island, I would dare tell you that 50% wouldn't even know that we have a partnership board. So creating awareness through, I've reached out to Michael in the Current, is let's have to put something in the Current for the foreseeable future. Just reminding people that we do have for $12 for a round, we have a great golf course. So. And then 2 new members are going to be voted on next week at the town council meetings. We'll be forward. What is that? Is there 2 or 1?
I'd like to see us get to a point where, because we've talked about several committees now, where we actually will be able to see from our committees jointly, supported by staff and council, that we see an annual plan. I don't know how they factor into the budget at this point, but they tend to operate month by month basis with no long view. And it's on the policy side, our committees and boards, but I'd like to see us support them and get to the point where they actually produce a plan for what they're going to do in the coming year, and that we have a mechanism for council to communicate with our boards and committees in terms of tasks, and that should cascade out of our priorities, but we never seem to get that far in terms of just simply a list of priorities, somewhat unprioritized, but we should drive our priorities to a point where we are assigning tasks to committees and boards that we're anticipating that they support. That's why they exist. And so I think that this next year is an opportunity to work on just that.
I'm seeing what Mr. Martin's seeing. 2022, we gave the par three $185,000. Then in '23, we gave them $243,000. And last year, we gave them $355,000. So all of the efforts we're doing is not turning the corner. Every year, it costs $100,000 more to subsidize it.
Well, what you have to look at is some of the council back in 19 probably, or 18, they took a different view of the par three golf course. So we didn't put as much money in that, we let it go back. And then council changed and says, now we would like to take it back the other way. So then we have a catch-up period of everything that was done before, and then you have to pay to get things changed. When we took the course over, we took over all the old utilized equipment, and Jonathan came up with a plan for 3 years for financing and those kind of things to change out the equipment to get the equipment where we could actually take care of the course. And then this year, he put in for one more piece of equipment to be able to cut the secondary roughs, because he's trying to make the course more playable or aesthetic. And so now he's going to have 3 different cuts instead of just the 2 cuts. So there's things in there, like I said, council can still make that decision on what they want to do to reflect that number, but you see the steady increase on that because of the quality that the golf course wanted to become. If we want to turn the other way, then you start going back the other way, and you get less play, and you start getting less things at it. But it's really council-driven on what they would like for that golf course to be, and it's fluctuated between councils.
So it's your opinion, though, after this big expense this year, they purchased what they needed to?
They should have every type of mower, sand trap rake, and everything else plugger to be able to operate the facility. I'm not saying the real mowers that they have to cut the greens are not going to need to be replaced in 2 to 3 years, but those can be spaced out as well. But to go back to the signage, as referred to, DOT does regulate those. We've put flags out, we've done every kind of thing, and then we go out there and pull up people's signs for violations, so we can't leave a violation in sign. Howie did put a sign out there to us, but it's a non-conforming sign. So it's something that we need to continue to look at on what we want to do there. But the golf course has always been sort of that item, either we're going to throw money at it to keep it where it needs to be, or we're not going to throw money at it and let it fall back off.
I want it to succeed.
To your credit, in just 120 seconds, you encapsulated the history. As a former member of the golf course committee, this has been a struggle. The golf course is a black swan. There aren't many par threes. Golf courses in general are losing revenue and memberships. So this is really a challenge. I think the best that we could hope for with the most aggressive plan going forward is to reduce the subsidy. We are never going to make money there. That's a given. So we have vacillated between we don't care, and at one point we were going to try to return it to South Harbor. We were going to turn it into a field. We were going to do this, do that. Now we're back to, can we make it competitive in terms of attracting people? Can we increase the membership, increase the number of rounds, do better advertising, signage, and therefore cut our costs? I don't know that we can increase the price much more than what it is. Having said all of that, from a golfing perspective, it is unique because anyone on this table, if you've never played golf before, you can walk out there and play. It's multi-generational. It's not an easy course, right? If you're serious, but if you just want to play, it's a wonderful place to take your grandkids. It aesthetically is in very good shape. I agree with Bob. I think we need a plan going forward, and we need to have reasonable expectations. Right? This is an amenity of the town. We, by covenant, going to have, right, for another decade. I think invest wisely would be my point. I know you're flagging the number, but we're going to have to do something sustainable going forward. Think of the, what is it, 450 houses, and property values are connected to this course in a way that we need to remember.
The other point that I think is, and I appreciate where you're coming from, Mark, because it does just look like a negative in terms of a budget perspective, but the golf course is part of our Parks and Recreation program. And this is the only part of that program that we single out in terms of cost. We don't single out the cost of any other aspect of our community Parks and Rec program. So it's not blatant what that costs us. And in terms of the diversity of what it adds in terms of opportunities for outdoor recreation is significant. And it's really a gem. The question is always, what is council willing to support? But 2 years ago, when there was a conversation during the budget about doing something other than golfing with the golf course to reduce this number, my plea was to let's make it what it is, the best of what it is, and see where the numbers are. So in 2 years, we've increased play hypothetically about 40%, adding, $2 or $3 to the cost of play. It likely will not be a tremendous impact from a community standpoint and would reduce that number of subsidization a little bit more, but it really is a gem in terms of our Parks and Rec program, and I think it has a level of scrutiny that no other aspect of our Parks and Rec program really undergoes. We have talked about sponsorship. I've been to some of the meetings, and with a committee that now is more marketing oriented. And again, with communications being key here, and because it's not visible, you see every other aspect of our Parks and Rec program as you navigate the island, but unless you know it's there, you don't go there. So I think there is a demand for finding better ways to communicate about this opportunity than what currently exists. But I just want us to keep in mind that it's scrutinized at a level that no other aspect of our Parks and Rec program is.
Justifiably so, though. The other parks cost us, we have to cut grass, or we have to paint a fence. This is costing us $350,000. So everything's in its perspective.
Well, I understand that, and it's a values. It comes down to values.
When we get to the fees, I am going to propose that, just like in paid parking, think about this. If South Harbor and Oak Island residents got a discounted annual pass, just like buying their parking passes, they'll buy a parking pass not knowing if they're ever going to use it or not. They might buy a golf pass if they get a discounted golf pass. We got to find ways to help them.
You're exactly right.
Help them start to win.
That's my point. You make that point.
No, they do have some good ideas. Some things like, beer and wine sales, for example.
We've asked HOA forever.
And this is something that actually, Mr. Kelly has got a draft from a legal agreement for them to review, for us to review, to see if it passes our muster. They're willing to move forward with it. They like to move forward with food trucks. They really do have some great ideas from a marketing perspective. A connectivity with the Business Advisory Board, and thinking of sponsorship opportunities, getting businesses behind
Yes.
this. I mean, there's so much that we can do once we begin to think out, they can do once the committee starts to think outside the box.
They're really untapped resources.
They've got some great ideas.
I'm starting to get encouraged then that maybe next year this number won't be so high.
Well, and I think by increasing the cost a couple of dollars, where else can you play golf for $15? 18 holes for a round of golf. It doesn't exist.
Well, I mean, that was my point. My point wasn't to not refer to this golf course as an attraction. It certainly is. My point is, this council, prior councils, took the initiative with things like the pier and the 801 Center that said, these items generate revenue. at some point, they need to help themselves so they don't get subsidized by the town. 2 years ago, a council sat here and said, okay, we're going to change direction. We're going to pump more money into the golf course to get it playable, right? We changed some of the watering locations and when the watering happens. We hired someone. We've been upgrading equipment. You just heard people say the course is probably in the best condition that it's been in years, and rounds are up 40%. So all I'm saying is, as this continues to increase in revenue, which it sounds like it is, it should offset the subsidy required to keep it going. Once we get through this last capital expenditure, I want to see the capital, be subtracted out of this, because we should be able to go a couple of years, maybe 3 years, without any capital expenditures. So the subsidy should come down, and as rounds continue to increase, and hopefully more memberships are sold, this thing needs to generate revenue because you pay to play, right? Other recreation attractions that we have are free. I certainly don't pay to go use the basketball court.
Or the Ocean Ed Center,
Or the Ocean
or the
Ed
Nature
Center. I don't
Center.
pay for any of those. I think the only thing we have that's fee-based is the fitness aspect of the rec center. There's a membership to be able to use the fitness portion of that.
And the pier.
And the pier, right? And the 801 Center, of course, you have to make a reservation, but otherwise,
Well, and
everything
kayaking.
is
You pay for
free.
kayaking down the Davis Canal. There are lots of programs you pay for, and we don't look and see what their balance is.
Yeah.
Which, do they pay for their expenses?
And they're nominal. Is there a percentage we'd like to see this reduced? Is there a target we would like to give?
Well, I mean, I think the math is fairly simple. How many rounds with a combination of annual memberships do we need to have to cover the expense of maintaining the course? And if we continue to fall short of driving the revenue to cover the expense, then obviously we have to make up the shortfall with the subsidy. But as rounds increase, and hopefully there's a marketing plan to try to drive annual memberships, then, we should be able to project revenue from the golf course over a timeline, right?
Or at least a reduction?
Exactly. So we can anticipate a lower subsidy as we increase revenues from additional rounds and/or annual membership sales.
So what I hear you saying, if I may, is what we need for the golf course is a financial model. That because there's a maximum, if you will, and we can even look at current percentages of use, weekdays versus weekends and holidays, that if we maximize how many plays in however many daylight hours, we should be able to project a capacity, and based on that capacity, we should be then able to see fee-wise with the combination of Bill's idea of having a season's pass why stop with just residents, right? It could be, the residents and the homeowners. We could do similar to parking. We could do something for others that are not immediately in the areas off island, so to speak, pass, and then
already
assign
have a
so
pass.
much money to then the remaining plays like parking. So I think there's a financial model that could be applied here that would set a target for the golf course and give council a much better idea when optimized how much can we reduce this 350,000?
Yep.
And that would then take us to a number that we can say it's worth continuing based on underwriting it at this dollar amount.
It's the same thing we did with the 801 Center. We sat down and we were like, we've got to reduce the subsidy for the 801 Center. And that translated into how many events do we need to book every year for the 801 Center to cover its cost?
Well,
If that was 50 weddings or 60 weddings or 100 events of some nature, There was a number presented to us 2 years ago, and that staff worked very hard to increase reservations, to drive events to the 801 Center. And today, I think the 801 Center is doing quite well. And maybe we'll talk about that.
Well,
here
yeah,
shortly,
but I think in fairness, the mayor is right. There should be a financial plan for amenities which we subsidize. So we did commission a financial plan for 801, and then the pandemic hit. They are not generating revenue. They're coming closer to breaking even. We have never had a financial plan per se for the golf course. So I like the idea of recruiting membership. I like the idea of better, more effective advertising. And frankly, we've never had the support of the rental community. They need to be partners with us. And then Bob talked about sponsorships. Great idea. But to be fair, if we're going to demand accountability, I want it for 801 too. I want to see those numbers and see the new financial plan. We have a new director, and we should require the same for the golf course, right? Is there anything else we're subsidizing? Not really.
Not at that.
Not at that level.
Not at that
This number jumps off the page, yeah, okay.
The motion,
So we're cheap, I mean,
we said,
David said the big capital outlay expenses are finished now. So
For the next 5 years, yeah.
So now we just need to help guide the par three to what is the best thing we can do to help you hit better numbers. They may not hit 100%, but if they can just hit 60, 70, 80%.
So at the risk of stifling with a very robust conversation, it seems, can we table it? And then when the next session, what session are we going to actually talk
The
about
11th.
this in depth?
We're not talking about golf till the 11th.
Yeah, can we table it until the 11th? And let's have them continue that robust conversation. We're just getting down a rabbit hole, in my opinion.
So I just have one question on page 8. The Muni Code updates, $10,000. That $10,000, are we restricted to the number of updates we can do? Is that a quarterly update or?
We send it in every month that there is an update, and they can put it on the homepage of our website page on their site.
Okay.
But then they still only incorporate the updates quarterly.
Have we looked at other hosting services? I know there are others out there, but it's disappointing.
We can ask them if they'll do
Yeah,
it
it's-
monthly, but it'll cost.
Save that.
Well, it's disappointing when we refer a citizen to the webpage, which takes them to Muni Code, and the ordinance is old and not the current ordinance. That's happening right now with the tree, the chapter 32. Folks, want to see the new ordinance, and it's not out there. And that's the only resource I think they have online is to go to Muni Code.
Well, I think the point that underlying what you're talking about goes back to communications. So when we make such sweeping ordinance changes like this, we do so without the thought of a communications plan. And where we've trained, if I understand correctly, we've trained our building community. We've not trained our real estate community, who really are somewhat ambassadors. We've not trained our public. We've not communicated in any way. So I think one of the things this points out is we really need to begin to think about communications plans associated with sweeping ordinance changes like parking. Look at what it took for parking. Well, very similar if we're serious about increasing our tree arbor and not losing any more. Then we need to have the same approach to communicating for that as well. I mean, we just don't do it, and I don't think it's to anyone's blame. I just think it's something we don't think about that we probably should.
I agree, communication is lacking, but I am aware that Rick Patterson has set up meetings with builders and with realtors to tell them about the new tree ordinance and all that. So but I mean, you're right, as far as somebody getting ready to buy a lot and might build their own house because they're pretty good at it, they have no clue what to do.
The tree companies are asking for information too.
Yeah.
Drew Love is saying, we haven't heard anything about it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, he's a big tree company on the side.
Any more questions on this section? I'm just watching our time.
So you were talking a minute ago about adding some assistance for Mike. Are you wanting to add a person in here that'd be roughly about $60,000?
So hopefully that individual, because Mike also does the website, which is huge. And I think there are more effective ways to communicate than just text, or emphasize, providing emphasis for things that are near term or that require promotion. I know that simply because it was my field in my professional career. So someone to help him with content creation. He can't do it all.
No, we're just asking for
Yeah.
consensus if council wants us to put that in the budget.
I can't say yes right now.
Full-time, part-time?
It's the pleasure of the board.
I say we table that and think about it till we get to Mike's.
Well, you're in Mike's.
Oh, this is Mike's. I'd like to put a pin in that for consideration, but again, we can't keep complaining about what isn't happening if it's not resourced correctly. I'll leave it at that.
I'll go further. I'm perfectly willing to support a part-time additional position. And what I would need to hear is what are the specific tasks that this person's going to do, right?
That's why I was hesitant. I don't know what the job description is and what is being done and what's not being done.
And, well, we know it isn't getting done, but what are the skill sets that we want of this person? Because I think it really begs for some type of graphical expertise.
Why don't we do this in the interest of time? Let's charge the administration coming back with a recommendation for duties for a part-time assistant to Mike.
With associated skill sets.
Yeah. Well, task and skill set, yes. And we'll just move on.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just wrapping up admin, there was a liability insurance increase. There was some additional IT improvements requested for penetration testing and employee testing for cybersecurity. That's included. The new financial software obviously is an increase. Capital outlay, take your attention to page 9, the capital outlay. We are out of storage space. The clerk needs proper facilities for climate-controlled file storage areas. We will be looking into that. And one of the main drivers of the increase in capital outlay here in admin is the consideration of town hall office construction downstairs. The idea is, again, to enhance the customer service experience when they come in, talk about moving the bill collection payment windows up closer, and instead of walking all the way back through the back of the offices to get to permits and the development services components, pulling them up front as well, so the customer will have everything all at the front. It also gives us greater security for staff in the back, because it's not a matter of if, but when. And so we're trying to keep all of that in mind. This is just the initial planning of that vision. So
I
we'll
like how
point
you're
those two
thinking.
things out, and that concludes admin.
The only thing we're getting ready to do before the end of the year, we're moving the downstairs conference room, where it'll actually be built up here on this foyer, and the area where the plants are sitting right now, that's getting ready to be built into a conference room. So we're not losing something, we're just relocating it.
And we'll be able to increase office space? And, yes, okay, I'm all for it.
As we add these people, we gotta have somewhere for them to go.
Exactly.
Catherine, before you move on, bottom of page 8, MCSJ, second year of contract.
Yes, that, thank you. MCSJ is the name of the Edmunds product that is the financial software, sorry.
Thank you very much.
Before we leave the subject of office space, Matthews Ministry, what are we doing there?
Council left it as was last year.
Well, at one point, we talked about,
At some point, asked them to remove themselves.
right, converting it into additional staff office space. It's our property, correct?
Yeah, so we started looking at that downstairs, and with the changes that we're recommending, this year's staff changes, we'll still have one office left over. So after that, if we're wanting to ask them to move, I would say, and you want to give them a year's notice, I'd say it's at least 2 years out for you would need that structure. Or do some other kind of modification somewhere else.
And we still don't know where we are on the current rec center building. So that could be some office space.
Could be. Just think if we're first of all, we're renovating to accommodate expansion of staff here. We're nearing the 0 point. We own the property. I'm not sure what the lease, but what the covenant is. If we're thinking about moving supplies or people into that building in the future, we should give them notice now. Even if it's 2-year notice, it's actually more generous. Okay, you have 2 years.
And that way we left it with them last year.
It is. It would come up in May or June on one of your agendas anyway to renew the lease. It's only a year lease.
Okay, I'm going to recommend that we give notice 2 years out.
Can we check
And I'm
to
against
see
that.
what plans that they've made? Because we gave them notice last year.
No, we told them that we were letting
Wrote
them
them a
stay in it,
letter.
and we would give them
Yes, we
notice.
give them a year, right. So that we have broached the conversation, not having it in detail. But if I understood correctly, and I don't remember the source, but they were going to begin to look where they could move to. No? Bill, you're saying no?
No. I'm of the opinion that the last time I talked to Judge Disbrow, whose wife runs Matthews Ministry, he said, I'm relieved that they're not asking us to leave because she actually has nowhere to go.
Last year, we gave them another year.
Yeah.
We didn't tell them we were going to remove them.
Yeah.
Or we're looking to remove. We said we would talk about it, which Councilman Baca said, and we would talk about it later, and I think the 2-year would be a more appropriate kind of thing if you were asking to relocate.
I just think that service does a very good service for our town. Thank goodness I haven't had to go ask somebody to give me food, but apparently a lot of people in Oak Island have to go ask someone to give them food, and that's a good service. And
I don't disagree.
I want to accommodate them until I no longer can accommodate them.
Well, I think what I'm hearing folks say is that in the course of the next 2 years, we may unfortunately be at that point. And I really...
Unfortunately, but we haven't decided what we're doing with the rec center yet. That's something that we could have determined 1.5 years ago. So we might have office space if we'd ever bring some of our stuff to full circle.
Don't disagree.
And then just saying, well, let's just kick out Matthew Ministry, and 3 or 4 months from now, we'll figure out what we're going to do with the old rec center building.
That's not a solution.
Yeah.
And don't leave out the senior center because
See.
they're busting at the seams. So we really need to think of this more holistically than just an athletic center. We need some multiple accommodations, if you will, and it may come in multiple buildings, but we need to consider all that our community offers in terms of recreational facilities, and hopefully we'll be able to get that. I think the last time we spoke, we were going to reissue the RFP. There was at least conversations about that, and I think we need to make a decision.
Not to belabor this, we do need a plan which encompasses facilities and infrastructure. And they're certainly a worthy cause. The optics of it would be horrible, especially if we don't communicate effectively. But I do think we need to give them notice that we may need the space. It's our space. We may be able to share it with them, we may be able to help them, but at some point, right, they need to be put on notice. That's only fair to them, right? And that's all it is notice at this point.
we'll see. I agree with you, Bill. I have no idea where the rec center is. It fell into an abyss, and that's where it lies, right?
Well, the first thing we need to do there is to assess our needs, and that's what this RFP was intended to do, I believe, was a needs assessment. And I think that's unquestionable. So we're not committing to architectural plans, we're not committing to building, we're not committing to anything.
We haven't
What
committed
need
to anything
do-
other than we voted one day 5-0 to get a new rec center. And other than that, we've committed to nothing.
Can I speak to that just a minute?
Go ahead.
So at the January retreat, I heard consensus from those present that I reach out to an architectural and engineering firm who I'm familiar with there in Chapel Hill. Had a long discussion with them, told them the steps that we needed to take. In fact, I've created a 2-page document that tells you how to do a capital project, and I'm happy to share it with all of you. This particular firm does not specialize in community recreation centers. What they did do was put me in contact with 2 firms in Atlanta, Georgia, who specialize in feasibility studies, needs assessments, things like that. So I feel like we have an outlet there to issue an RFP and get some solid information back. They also put me in touch with 3 architectural firms in Wilmington who specialize in designing and doing construction administration bidding on community rec centers. And so we have those resources. I think our RFP needs a second look, and it needs a little more detail, needs to be a little more specific than what we provided. And the fact that the one submitter, who in my opinion is an athletic facility designer, not necessarily a rec center designer, didn't provide us with a fee at all is concerning to me. So I think I can show you a way forward based on my experience, and then it has to be amenable to council for the way to proceed.
That's encouraging, and that's what I've been saying. What I've been saying is what you've been saying. There's answers out there on the rec center. We need to get our answers on the rec center. The rec center people that you have found and have access to, they might come in and tell us, build on the building you got. So that shuts me up on additional office space. Or they
Might say,
tear this building down. And I'll say, wait a second, let's use it for office space. They might say, build you a new rec center somewhere else. But until we start kicking other people out because we need office space, I think we need to find out what our RFP people are going to advise us to do on a rec center.
I think
If they tell us to build a new building, then we have a building that can be used for office space.
I think the advice that I would offer to my colleagues is that we've lost time already, and not to belabor it, but including the new town manager and the new assistant town manager in this process will be a huge benefit. That doesn't mean that we can't be drafting documents and things like that to have ready to be reviewed and looked at, but in terms of actually releasing the RFP, I think it would be helpful to have the assistant town manager and the new town manager look at that.
Not opposed to that at all, but I've waited a year and a half.
Understand,
We've all waited.
We all
understand.
have. And come on, people, let's
go
go.
forward.
Well, it starts with a needs assessment.
And concede this one point to me. Let's hold off on writing.
Letters to Matthew Ministry until we see where we are on the rec center. That's my thought.
I'm okay with that. I have no issue with that. As long as they're on a year-to-year basis.
Yeah.
Heather to come up and join us if you're ready to move to recreation.
And where we're behind on time today, we're having conversations that we won't need to have going forward.
Good conversations. Wow, Heather's. So again, you see the org chart for all the personnel in the Recreation Department. And the same format, you have the budget as requested for the Recreation Department immediately behind that. Ooh, looks like they got crooked on mine. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Heather, who's going to just walk through some of the significant changes. Go ahead.
That's great. So, we are, sorry, I don't have it.
Your mic is, it's muted. You're blinking.
Just hit the highlight.
Terry, let's get that on the April agenda for the RFPs for June 1st. Pardon me? May. May. But
Looking at a few of these significant increases, we're looking at advertising, which is 10,620,3200. Currently, we are budgeted at 1,000. We've only spent 7,260. However, our banner for the concert series hasn't been purchased yet because we're still finalizing our sponsors. So that's a $900 banner. So it'll take us up. So we're hoping to increase it to 2,000 to be able to also have radio ads for concert series and for our other events throughout the year. And then also increase advertising in other areas through the magazines and newspapers. So that's the reason for that as well. And then in 10,620,3600, staff development, I would like to increase that by 200 and hope to send 2 staff to the NCRPA conference, which is a national conference. It's 3 days, and it's 600 each, which would include accommodation and transportation. It's a great opportunity to have new ideas, refresh what we are already doing.
It's a good conference.
Then in contracted services,